There's some important programs going on in the DA's office, especially everything that goes on in Chatham County, including one way that you may be able to expunge your own record and try to help get you a better job. I'm here with the District Attorney, Shalina Cook-Jones. Thanks so much for joining us.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me.
We were just talking about it. It's 3 months into the new term here.
Yeah.
You just got reinstalled back in December.
Right.
What did you walk in this time maybe learning from that first term that said, now I want to get these things done?
Well, the first term was really pretty much about making the machinery of the justice system work. As you might know, that we were struggling with staffing, bringing people on board who embraced our philosophy of prosecution, training, leadership, all those things, and making sure that dockets were covered. And that took quite a while, especially because when I came onto office, we were still dealing with the C word, or COVID-19, which a lot of people don't want to say now. But now that we have that under our belt, I found that we've gotten a lot more applications of ADAs who are interested in the way we prosecute and our philosophy and structure. And so now that we are more closer to full strength than we were before, we can kind of shift and pivot and start looking at programmatic programs and community-based prosecution.
And one of those you've got coming up is this expungement program, which you did in your first term over here. The idea is to try to give people a little bit of a chance to get their records clean for smaller offenses.
Well, yes. So it's important to note that 1 out of every 3 Americans has some kind of criminal history on their record. And it's likely much more than that. A lot of people don't know. So while it's important for us to do this in the community because the Georgia lawmakers have recently changed the expungement or record restriction statute to include misdemeanor offenses. So now those folks who have had misdemeanor offenses on their record can now come and get that restricted. But the other thing is that there are also instances in which the state is obligated to do a mandatory restriction, and where those 3 instances exist, our office and other law enforcement agencies have to initiate the restriction process. And so it's good not just for those people who have a conviction they know about, but it's also good for us to normalize how we handle criminal history. And you check your criminal history the same way you check your credit history. It makes sense, right? And so there's an element to that too.
Because we're not talking about major crimes here. We're not talking about felonies, we're not talking about murders or anything else, but you're talking about some traffic offenses and some of those misdemeanors, which I know you've said can actually affect people's ability to get a better job.
That's absolutely right. And so I want to assure all citizens and the public that the things that we expect to stay on people's criminal history is still there. Felony convictions, all convictions having to do with domestic violence, sexual assaults, child molestation, and those things can absolutely not be expunged. But lower level offenses, I'm talking about every man's offense or woman's offense to be more PC, the DUIs, the nonviolent misdemeanors, traffic offenses, whatever the case might be, they now have a chance to get that removed. And we know, because the studies show, that any criminal history, especially in this market, creates great obstacles to not just employment, but housing, military enrollment, higher education, and other social benefits that that all really translate into greater access, influence, and opportunity.
Absolutely. That expungement clinic Friday at Live Oak Public Library on Abercorn Street from 11 o'clock in the morning until 6. Have to ask you really quickly, we've had unfortunately a series of violence offenses right here in Savannah, a lot of shootings recently as well. You've come out strong on some of the bond offenses because several of these people have been out on bond before they've done that, including several of the Ellis Square shooters out there.
Sure.
What can be done from your office right now to work with the judges, perhaps to limit some of these bonds or end some of them, keep them in prison or in jail at least until you can go through prosecution?
Well, I think it's important to note that these processes in which bond decisions are made are driven by statute. The Georgia lawmakers have actually expanded the bond schedule, increasing the number of offenses for which an accused individual has to see a judge. So that's step 1. However, these bond hearings are usually attended in chambers with the judge, the state, and the defense, and we make arguments based on the 6 factors that are set forth in the statute as to why someone is not or should not be entitled to a bond. And the judges have many tools that they can avail themselves of. We typically do, if the judge is going to grant bond, ask for an ankle monitor, house arrest, a curfew, not hanging around other criminals, no liquor, no drugs or alcohol. But unfortunately, we just don't have a crystal ball. And overwhelmingly, people who are on bond do not reoffend. Between 80 and 90% of those people do what they're supposed to and come back for court. But we're looking at a different segment of the population now.
So you plan on doing as much as you can to try to keep these people in jail, at least until prosecution, to understand this case more, since we've had so many problems.
Yeah, and that's something that we've always done, and I think that the judges are sensitive to that now, and so we'll start to see maybe fewer people getting bonds where they have a serious violent history or have committed a serious offense. So they're at the table. I've been talking to them, and I expect that things will improve going forward.
All right, DA Cook Jones, thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
that
having
very
me.
much.
Thank you
Remember,
very much.
Expungement Clinic 11 to 6 at Live Oak Library on
That's right.
Friday as well.
Yes, come on out. We can't wait to see you.
All right, hopefully the weather will be good. Scott?
Yes.